verdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Siempre. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hacia dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
What's happening? What's happening? We are live and direct. This is the Rise Up Morning Show. How y'all feeling out there? Yeah.
Doing good.
Hold up. Natasha, let's pause this thing for a second. Isaac sound like this the good night show. It's
doing good.
Doing good.
Fucking early.
It's Rise Up. Wake up.
Rise up, everybody. Even my black ass. Shit.
What time is it in Vegas, Isaac?
It is 5:14 a.m.
Okay.
So
5:14 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
Still,
you sound kind of tired. You know.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
The city that never sleeps.
City never sleep. Okay. I don't know about all that. How you doing? Everything good?
Everything's good. Up this morning.
Okay.
Just, glad to be up. Wish I could was still sleeping, but it's okay.
Okay. You reporting live from the planet Brooklyn, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. Well, shout out to Brooklyn and Vegas. You know what I'm saying? ATL running things today. You know what it is. We live from Rap Brown, Georgia. Shout out to Ma'am Jamil Alameen, formerly H. Rap Brown. You know what I'm saying?
Free them all. That's right.
Yes, free them all. Matter of fact, speaking of free them all, I think there was a few Curb Fest this past weekend. Is that right?
Yeah, there was Baltimore and Boston.
Okay.
Yep, on the 31st. Yep. So they were able to successfully have their Curb Fest, and New York's having their Curb Fest this Saturday.
Okay.
I'll show y'all the flyer a little later if we have time.
Okay. Well, you already said for folks that don't know, Natasha already talked about she's dedicating an hour and a half each show. Talk about Curb Fest. You know what I mean? Then whatever else we want to talk about, we can talk about. But I saw some pics from Boston and whatnot. Shout out to Kazi, and I forgot who else was there. A lot of times everybody looked the same and whatnot. But shout out to the folks.
Shout out to Tone for putting together the Boston Curb Fest and executing it.
No doubt.
I think Ricky did the one in Baltimore.
Okay.
And so they went off successfully, which is great. And so we are excited to do Curb Fest for New York. Hopefully it doesn't rain this Saturday. Keep our fingers crossed.
Okay.
I mean, a slight chance of rain, but the universe.
Okay. Y'all know what y'all doing out there? What?
You said what?
Y'all know what y'all doing in New York or what? I'm just
Yeah, we
checking.
know what we're doing in New York.
Okay.
I mean,
Just
it's New
checking.
York, of course.
Okay. I'm just, I
You're
ain't
not
trying
the
to hate on.
Bronx. No, I'm
Okay.
kidding.
Oh, you said you're not where?
I said we're not the Bronx.
Wow. How you
I said
set
I'm
tripping?
kidding. We love the Bronx. We love the Bronx.
Listen, I'm about to be up there. I ain't got nothing to say. I'm shout out to NY Massive. Also, Curb Fest in Houston to be coming up in October. I got to definitely shout them out. They invited me to come out October 26th in Houston. So I know they got a gang of folks that'll be out there. So make sure you support that as well. And really support anything dealing with political prisoners because that's where it's at. But speaking of that, next week in New York, September 12th, there will be a press conference. There will also be panel discussions, etc., for Leonard Peltier's 80th birthday. That is next, I don't know what day, I believe it's next Thursday, that September 12th falls on. So make sure if you're in New York, if you're in Philly, if you're in Jersey, if you're in Connecticut, if you're in Boston, come out for Leonard Peltier. You know what I mean? There'll be a special announcement being made about what's going on with his case, and also him being on this planet for 8 decades. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you know.
Also, there's gonna be a book signing this Friday, I believe, for Russell Maroon Schultz's new book,
Okay.
who's just coming out. His autobiography. It's supposed to be on this Friday in the what's that place called? That it's a place. The name is like right on the tip of my tongue, but I'm
Where's it
forgetting.
at? Let me help you.
Yeah, that's the thing. I know where it is. What's the name of that place?
What city? What state?
The Forum. It's in Manhattan.
Oh,
The
the
People's
People's
Forum.
Forum.
I believe it's in the
Okay.
at the People's Forum. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh
So
yeah.
shout out to maybe we can get Russell, Sharon, or Teresa on to talk about the book. So,
Yeah.
I don't know why
Yeah.
Natasha ain't on that. She talking about the book, but she ain't even on it. So, Natasha.
Look. Okay. Look. I'm gonna get Russell. Okay.
Okay. All right. So you know, don't make me call Russell. I notice every time y'all say y'all
Don't
gonna
make
get a
me
guest.
call Russ.
It don't be you, Natasha, but the rest
Exactly.
of
I
these
was gonna say
folks. The rest of these
when I
folks.
said I was gonna get someone on, I got him on.
Okay, all right. I ain't talking about you. I'm talking about some of these other folks. But we will also be at the People's Forum for the joint. That's where I'm glad you said the People's Forum because I didn't mention where for the Leonard Peltier piece on February 12th. I mean February 12th. Lord have mercy. What month is it? September 12th. I'm ahead of my time. I thought I was behind. Anyway, yes. So we have a great show today. Powerful show. We're gonna have someone who's been on the Rise Up show on numerous occasions. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, he was the first guest. Our comrade and OG Dhoruba bin Wahad will be joining us shortly. So we want to make sure that you all stick around, share, subscribe, like. Also, I want to say shout out to the folks that's been checking out the magazine, Afropic. Our first issue so far, we've gotten over 1,000 downloads. That's dope. Gotten great reviews. We appreciate that. The second issue is on the way. It'll drop, I believe, the end of next week. So, or in the next 2 weeks. I don't want to give you the false dates or whatever. So make sure you check out Afropic. If you didn't get your copy yet, go to blackpowermedia.com/shop. blackpowermedia.org/shop. And you can find your complimentary inaugural issue of Afropic. So make sure you check that out. And we're also looking for more writers and whatnot. So folks who are interested in coming on board, make sure you tune in with us. I mean, yeah.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
Let me share my the Curb Fest flyer. I
Okay. All right.
I'm
Okay.
also looking for Maroon's book signing one too.
Okay. Look at Natasha coming all prepared and whatnot. Early in the morning. That's all right. So along with all the things we're talking about, again, for folks who are new to the platform, first let's check out this flyer and whatnot. We're gonna pause for the call. September 7th. So so you did say it's this week.
Yeah, it's literally this Saturday.
Okay.
It is on Utica
Okay.
between Montgomery and Crown Street, 406 Utica Avenue.
Okay.
It's gonna one from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And so we're going to
Okay.
have all of these different things happening. So please come out, support the political prisoners. We're going to be giving out a little free food, some free, a free haircuts raffle, ice cream, seed packets, tons of things for people to do, all while learning about and supporting and raising awareness for political prisoners so we can get them out.
That's dope. So, and I think Ikemba and you will be on the scene for that Curb Fest. Ikemba's there to eat the free ice cream. You know what I'm saying? We already. So y'all come out there and catch Ikemba getting a haircut. It's free ice cream. Take some pictures with Natasha and Ikemba. Tag us, Rise Up Morning Show. You know what I'm saying? Run up on them, be like, "Oh my God, I watch all your shows and whatnot," because that's how it be going down. So make sure that y'all check out Natasha, Ikemba, and all the good people in Brooklyn at Curb Fest on this Saturday. Yes. Also, we want folks to know, because we want to make sure that, just like we're doing right now, and shout out to Happily Natural. The Happily Natural Festival was a great situation this past weekend. The Last Poets, Bilal, the soul singer, you know what I'm saying, Sonny Patterson, shout out to our brother Duran Chavis, brother Manifest, and his wife and his family and his organization, our comrades, for always putting on quality, powerful work. 21st year commemoration of Happily Natural. Of course, we just wrapping up Black August, but we want folks to know that it's a lot going on, and that if you have any information, if you have events in your areas or anything that we should know about, make sure you send it to us. Send us that information. MediaBlackPower@gmail.com is the email address, MediaBlackPower@gmail.com, or tag us on IG. We're Black Power Media on X. You know what I'm saying? Just look for us, and we can help you to get that information out. Anyway.
Okay, I found the flyer.
Okay, look at Natasha. Boy, she waking up this morning too. Boy, between her and Isaac, I'm gonna go back to sleep. But go ahead. What you got for us, Natasha?
All right, let me share my screen thing.
Okay.
This is for the Maroon book signing this Friday the 6th.
And shout out to Russell, Teresa, Sharon, and all the fam. Okay. And this is Friday.
Yes. So this is for the book launch of I Am Maroon, Russell Schultz. So it's going to be a reading and discussion Friday, September 6th at from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at the Violetta Para stage at the People's Forum, 320 West 37th Street, New York, 10018. Okay, and it says free and open to the public, just so you know. And so these are some of the people that will be there discussing. And
no doubt, we got cool Sister Nejma on deck. Okay. Now that's what's up, man. I'm glad. New York, y'all got something to do. We just gave you the whole rundown. Friday, you should be at the I Am Maroon Russell Schultz piece. You know what I'm saying? At the People's Forum. Saturday, you should be on Utica Avenue in Brooklyn. Between Montgomery and what?
Crown.
Between Montgomery and Crown. You know what I mean? Checking out Curb Fest. So you got things, and these are all around political prisoners. It makes my heart smile. So with that in mind, we got so much going on. I want to, before we bring our guests on, we're going to go to a quick Black Power break. And then we're going to be back with a former political prisoner and veteran fighter, BLA, Black Panther Party. Our brother Dhoruba and Wahad will be joining us very shortly. I think my brother Isaac's going to take us to a quick Black Power break, and we'll be back at you. Black Power Media, y'all know what we do. Rise up.
Africa, I greet you in the name of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World. You may ask, what organization is that? It is for me to inform you that the Universal Negro Improvement Association is an organization that seeks to unite into one solid body the 400 million Negroes of the world. to link up the 15 million Negroes of the United States of America with the 20 million Negroes of the West Indies, the 40 million Negroes of South and Central America, with the 280 million Negroes of Africa, for the purpose of bettering our industrial, commercial, educational, social, and political conditions. As you are aware, the world in which we live today is divided into separate race groups and distinct nationalities. Each race and each nationality is endeavoring to work out its own destiny to the exclusion of other races and other nationalities. We hear the cry of England for the Englishman, of France for the Frenchman, of Germany for the German, of Ireland for the Irish, of Palestine for the Jew, of Japan for the Japanese, of China for the Chinese. We of the Universal Negro Improvement Association are raising the cry of Africa for the Africans, those at home and those abroad. There are 400 million Africans in the world who have Negro blood coursing through their veins, and we believe that the time has come to unite these 400 million people for the one common purpose of bettering their conditions. The great problem of the Negro for the last 500 years has been that of disunity. No one or no organization ever succeeded in uniting the Negro race. But within the last 4 years, the Universal Negro Improvement Association has worked wonders in bringing together in one fold 4 million organized Negroes who are scattered in all parts of the world, being in the 48 states of the American Union, all the West Indian Islands, and the countries of South and Central America and Africa. These 4 million people are working to convert the rest of the 400 million scattered all over the world. And it is for this purpose that we are asking you to join our ranks and to do the best you can to help us to bring about an emancipated race. If anything praiseworthy is to be done, it must be done through unity. And it is for that reason that the Universal Negro Improvement Association calls upon every Negro in the United States to rally to its standards. We want to unite the Negro race in this country. We want every Negro to work for one common object, that of building a nation of his own on the great continent of Africa. That all Negroes all over the world are working for the establishment of a government in Africa means that it will be realized in another few years. We want the moral and financial support of every Negro to make the dream a possibility. Already, this organization has established itself in Nigeria, West Africa, and is endeavoring to do all possible to develop that Negro country to become a great industrial and commercial commonwealth. Pioneers have been sent by this organization to Nigeria, and they are now laying the foundations upon which the 400 million Negroes of the world will build. If you believe that the Negro has a soul, if you believe that the Negro is a man, if you believe the Negro was endowed with the senses commonly given to other men by the Creator, then you must acknowledge that what other men have done, Negroes can do. We want to build up cities, nations, governments, industries of our own in Africa, so that we'll be able to have a chance to rise from the lowest to the highest positions in the African Commonwealth.
You know what it is? That's Garvey. You know what I mean? I mean, Marcus Garvey, over 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, I believe that particular piece right there was 102, 103 years old. You know what I mean? He had more strength, more courage and energy than a whole lot of people that exist today. You know what I mean? And it is to a great extent, it's somewhat, you feel it in your soul when you hear Garvey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what does Garvey mean to you two? We're gonna bring in our guest in a second when he turns his camera on. What does Garvey mean to you, Natasha?
I think to me, Garvey means that is really to me sovereignty, and sovereignty in a way like when we talk about Kuji Chagalia, you know, to name yourself, to be yourself, to all of those things. And I think like to me that Garvey represents that sovereignty, that willingness, that courage to say and do as you are and as you think, right? Even beyond whatever anybody else believes that you are and can do. Because just his audacity that he had when it came to doing big things and thinking, in terms of unity for, you know, all African people, like just the level and the scale of, you know, his vision. That takes, like, you know, a lot of audacity and just operating within your own power, like determining for yourself. I remember I was reading this passage from one of his books one time, and it was talking about how, like, he went to, I think it was England, and he's just like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go see. He's writes a letter to, you know, he's like, writes a letter because he wants to make an appointment with all of these different you know, figureheads. And, you know, people are like, well, who are you? He's just like, I'm Marcus, like, I'm Marcus Garvey. Like, that's why you should be seeing me, for no other, you know, reason. Like, you don't have to, he didn't wait for someone to give him a title and say that he was important or anything like that. So, you know, he represents like the Kuji Chagalia, like embodies Kuji Chagalia to me. That's self.
No doubt. No doubt. I'm gonna get back to you, Isaac, but I'm gonna bring on a brother who I know is inspired by Garvey, a good brother, Dhoruba. What's happening, Dhoruba? How you feeling today, brother?
I'm feeling fine, black man. How was everybody? Peace, power to the people, everybody.
Power
How
to the
y'all?
people. No doubt.
Doing
no
good,
doubt.
doing
We're
good.
good. How are you?
I'm fine, sister love. How you doing? I've been listening to you. You keep that fire burning, sister love.
Oh,
It's
thank
good.
you.
It's good. And you
Right
too,
on.
Isaac. I've been listening to y'all, trying to keep your folks updated, especially on the international tip. You know, we got a lot of work to do. I was just talking to Kalanji today about deepening our approach and our analysis and our presentation of current events and international events as we begin to slide towards possible war in the Middle East, in Western Asia, and in Africa. You know, the coups that are coming at Burkina Faso right now, the coup attempts. They're coming at Burkina Faso right now, at Niger and Mali, and in some extent Guinea, is becoming increasingly desperate. And we know that young people are rising up in Kenya, in South Africa, in Nigeria, in Sudan. So, you know, we're heading towards a change in the figurative leadership of the empire in November. People are talking about domestic civil war in the U.S. and how that's going to look. The left is rising increasingly to power in the European Union. We have race riots and anti-fascist riots in the UK. The migration problem and the people coming across the Mediterranean is increasing. For Europe, we see what happens with Libya, with the fleeing of the central bank, people fleeing from Libya because of the takeover of the oil by Haftar, this reactionary in eastern Libya. So there's a lot going on, and you know, Black Power media, Black Liberation media, Rise Up. All of you guys are very important in trying to analyze this and get the information to our people on how our struggle fits into these things and the role that we must play here in as empire begins to unravel. So I'm just want to give you all a shout out and keep up the work.
What up? Isaac, you had something to say, brother? Thank you.
Yeah, no, I want to say thank you, Elder Dhoruba. Just even hearing that from you gives us this even more strength to continue what we're doing, because it just shows we're in the right place, and we're touching the right people. To speak on Garvey, I think for me it starts with understanding how we don't get Malcolm without Garvey, and that's through the lens of his father. The fact that we are living in current times right now where the united front that Dhoruba bin Wahad has called for, as we're speaking with right now, Marcus Garvey was calling for. So I think that just goes to show you the strength that Marcus Garvey still has, that's instilled in everybody that's on the screen. And I think the goal at hand and the goal in mind has always been liberation. And the only way we do that is by continuing to speak the words, continuing to say Marcus Garvey, and to never let the masses not know who Marcus Garvey was and how he, affected a multitude of scholars, academics, historians, political prisoners, activists, revolutionaries, and that's why we're at this stage today, where 124 years, you can say, 123 years, you could say, his words still resonate today, which also, highlights that the problems haven't really been properly addressed. And so I'll leave it there.
So D, real quick, are you in a space that is there a device that's playing, or that's just people in the background? Because it sounds kind of.
Are you hearing something?
Yeah, it sounds like a device.
Yeah, I hear that too. Yeah, I think I might be on another screen. Let me check. Give me a second here. I think you're right. I think I got another program.
Yeah, sounds like you had the military outside. We like, oh man, free D.
No, I'm trying to figure out where it's just coming. Oh yeah. It's my cell phone.
Okay.
Is that it? Is that gone?
Sound a lot better, man. For a while, we was listening to whoever you was listening to.
No. I had my phone on another program on YouTube. Some information. Yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah. So, just starting off, we just mentioned, you heard the voice of Garvey, so on and so forth. Just real quick before we get into the meat of things, you coming from the Black Panther Party, coming from the BLA era, so on and so forth. Garvey being one of the moral rudders and the individuals that you all had to look at. How did his work impact you, especially you coming from not only African but coming from a Caribbean ancestry as well? You know what I'm saying? How did that impact you and your work as far as Garvey?
Well, in all honesty, I really didn't deal with the UNIA and its rise and its fall until analyzing it and understanding it, until basically I was in the Black Panther Party, and that was because of all the reasons you guys just stated about the ideological and Pan-African groundwork that his organization laid in the Black community and the African diaspora. But I want to point out something very, very, very crucial. And while it's important for us to look back at our radical history and our radical traditions and the historical figures that led our struggles at a particular moment, we must understand that these were occurring in a historical context, in a different time, in a different era. If we listen to the words of Garvey, he's using the term Negro. We use the term Negro today as a pejorative. In the radical revolutionary circles, we use it as a pejorative. The Hakeem Jeffries, Negroes. The collaborators with white supremacy, Negroes. And the reason why we use it as pejoratives is because it has been so-called a middle class endorsed leadership that unseated Garvey, that competed with Garvey at that time. Some of this leadership, over a period of time, became much more revolutionary, much more radical, and in many ways aligned itself with Garvey. But in the beginning, he had to deal with the talented tenth and the criticisms and the struggles against Du Bois and against the George Washington Carvers of his era. You see, just like today, we have to deal with the bootlickers like the present mayor of New York City, a former cop, and or we have to deal with reactionaries like Hakeem Jeffries in the House of Representatives, or the whole cabal of the Congressional Black Caucus, who are totally silent and for the most part, on U.S. foreign policy in Africa and on the genocide of the Palestinian people taking place right now. So we have to look at Garvey in his real historical context. Okay, we could see how some of his groundbreaking organization and understanding of Pan-Africanism and colonialism at that particular point before World War II, at the end of World War I, was indeed enlightening and presaged the understanding that solidarity that we now have with African struggles. But at the same time, we need to understand that at that time, this was European colonialism and control over Africa was at its zenith, you know, in the early 1920s. Africa had already been carved up. It had already been balkanized. The rise of the beginning of the African neo-colonial class, they were being educated in this period. They were being recruited into the imperialist hegemony of this period. The Balfour Declaration in 1923 was just new at that time. And we all know that the Balfour Declaration is what has led to the European settler state of Israel today. But it was new then. And Ottoman Empire had just collapsed at the end of World War I. So there was a whole different world that Garvey was in. But some of it is filtered down to today. We could look at the Black Star in Ghana's flag. The Black Star comes directly from Marcus Garvey by via way of Kwame Nkrumah, who we also look at as one of the Pan-African icons and leaders of the decolonization period in Africa after World War II, up until the founding of Ghana in 1957. So we really need to understand that Messiah Marcus Garvey in many ways was ahead of his time in his perception of European colonialism and inevitable demise and decolonization of Africa that would follow 60 years later. So yeah, Garvey is that man. We should study that. We should look at that. But we should also look at the class forces in the Black community that opposed what Garvey was doing, that worked on behalf of the imperialists at that time. The Hakeem Jeffries of today are no different than the George Washington Carvers of yesterday, and some of the Negroes of yesterday that opposed Garvey, that opposed that. So I just wanted to say that.
So why do you think? Because I've heard people, you know, and I know that, you know, we have certain topics we're gonna get on, but since we're talking about Garvey, I've heard certain folks consider themselves freedom fighters be very critical of Garvey. Some even fixing their mouths to call him a con. You know, what's your thoughts on that? Because I think that you know, I think that in many cases Garvey gets a bad rap. I think for one, he doesn't fit the description of the European friendly African. You know, he wasn't he wasn't compromising. He wasn't trying to rub elbows with white folks. He wasn't trying to accept their terms or their realities. So why do you think that it's so much criticism around Garvey?
Well, I don't know if this might cause a lot of problems for folks, but I have a unique. I don't think it's unique, but I think it's a common sense, a pragmatic understanding. Being a historical materialist, we have to look at the fact that Marcus Garvey and the UNIA and the projects that they initiated were basically capitalist in nature. You know, he did not really oppose or vociferously denigrate the economic system of capitalism as opposed to his staunch opposition to colonialism and imperialism. But all of his organizations, the UNIA, the Black Star Line, were all formatted as capitalist enterprises. And we need to also understand that Marcus Garvey's appeal at that time was somewhat messianic. And by Messianic, I mean it appealed to the higher calling of African people, sort of like a spiritual and soulful call to African people to unite. It had a spiritual dimension to it. And out of that inspirational call for Black folks to recognize their own power, to recognize their own worth, is a hell of a call coming out. You got to remember, in 1923, we were still into pre-Jim Crow. We were still into the feudal system of sharecropping, huh? We were still into that. We hadn't emerged from that yet. So just to be said that rise up, you Black people, this is your destiny. That's a hell of a call to a people who have been maligned and enslaved and who were in feudal bondage to the land in post-slavery America. And out of that movement emerged the Messianic Christian movements of the early 20th century. Father Divine, Sweet Daddy Grace, and Elijah Muhammad, and the Nation of Islam. And all of those organizations, I don't know if my speaker died. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. You good.
All of those organizations that came out of the collapse of Marcus Garvey's UNIA, these Messianic preachers, the Sweet Daddy Graces, the Father Divines, the Elijah Muhammads, they drew on this spiritual and I would say social and moral superiority of African people, but they were all capitalist oriented. They were all capitalists. They were not socialist movements that talked about the overthrow of capitalism, which of course was the basis of the European settler state, was mercantilism. That's what our slavery represented. We were beasts of burden. We were tools of production, of agricultural production, literally. You see, and so when we formulated the Black Star Line, it was a capitalist enterprise. It was based on basic capitalist business models. It wasn't something that was a socialist organization that was meant to organize workers into an independent, against the owners of the means of production and all. It wasn't like that, you see. So I just want to say that some of the people that malign Marcus Garvey malign him because of this class analysis, because of his class basis, rather than embrace him because of his advanced understanding of European white supremacy and the organization of imperialism and the role that the diaspora has to play. And finally, I want to say that it is Marcus Garvey that has inspired the Pan-African movement all of these years. And it's the Pan-African movement, it's the Pan-African ideal and ideology that has found its way to Africa. Pan-Africanism didn't start in Africa. It started in the diaspora. And up until my first landing here in Ghana in 1993, the idea and the notion of Pan-Africanism was not what Kwame was not as Kwame Nkrumah envisioned it. They had maligned Kwame Nkrumah here in Ghana. They had called him a dictator. They had done all of these things because the CIA was heavily involved in the overthrow of Nkrumah and the rise to power of the current opportunistic class that's in power now, and the establishment of the duopoly political system that we have today in Ghana between the MPP and the NDC, that's mimicking the Republican and the Democratic Party, but is based on ethnic rivalries and tribal differences here in Africa. And this has manifested itself across Africa as quote democracies. You see, the two-party system. I think the two-party system is just as alien to Africans as the man in the moon. We have to develop our own approach to empowerment and to how do we organize the state. Okay, so I think the malignment of Marcus Garvey comes in many respects from
we lost you. You're muted. You frozen,
Okay,
dude.
you all up? Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you now. Your camera's kind of messed up, but we
Yeah.
can hear you
You
good.
lost.
We
The
got you.
camera's messed up.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
we can hear you.
I was on my earphones. I'm sorry. My
No, it's all
earphones
good.
just died.
We still hear you.
I hope I didn't lose anybody in what I was trying to say. I was trying to say many of the Messianic movements that we have today, the Cephalo dollars, these pork chop preachers, with these huge congregations and telling that Jesus wants you and God wants you to get paid, and you can buy your way in, into heaven, and you even got people selling land in heaven, so all of these trends, these Messianic movements come out of Garvey, come out of the Garvey movement.
Are you saying they gentrify heaven, brother? Is that what you're trying to say?
They're trying to gentrify it, but we know that the black entrepreneurs are going to lock that down. They're going to be selling used angel wings. They're going to be selling used angel wings like they sell used cars. Yeah.
So black folks ain't even gonna be able to go to hell, brother.
Yeah, well, I ain't gonna go. Let's not go there. But I'm just saying, a lot of these Messianic movements, their style of organization. Look how Sweet Daddy Grace, the Father Divine, organized their followers. They organized them in much the same way that Marcus Garvey organized in the UNIA. With the trappings of state and the hierarchies and all of that stuff. And so many of these organizers were influenced heavily by Garvey, but it's just that their message was more of a divine nature, was more of a religious nature. But they all had one thing in common: they were black capitalists. They did not organize to overthrow or organize workers to undermine or somehow take control of the means of production or of even the surplus value of production, which is profits off of labor. So none of these organizations were working class or workers' organizations as such. They were quasi-black capitalists. You see, and so I think that's one of the reasons why some of our nationalists, our brothers and sisters, who are serious Pan-African nationalists, kind of like deride Garvey and criticize him.
So real quick, and I'm gonna open up questions for my co-hosts and whatnot, man, because I know we do have a meet. But you mentioned, of course, we know that you've been living in Ghana for a while. The average African in America, when they talk about repatriation, they want to go to Ghana. You know what I'm saying? They talk about West Africa, for the most part. The current state of Ghana. If knowing what you know now, would that been the place you would be headed to if you were looking to repatriate at this particular moment in time?
Well, if I was a black capitalist and I had some bank, I had some money, and I didn't mind rubbing shoulders with the likes of reactionaries who work hand in glove with the U.S. corporations and the CIA and the IMF. Yeah, Ghana would, you see, but I'm sad to say that I'm not that. I'm so broke I can't pay attention, so I don't have that type of finance to invest. And in that respect, then I have to look at the Ghanaian situation as tragic. The infrastructure in Ghana is poor, to say the least. The roads and the services for poor people is almost non-existent. Unemployment is over 60%. The inflation rate in Ghana is over 73%. the inflation rate. Ghana is in debt to the IMF to the tune of billions and billions of dollars. And we know that the IMF and the World Bank use their loans in order to manipulate and control African governments and African policies and investment opportunities for Western corporations. And then also the Ghana is hand in glove with the U.S. intelligence apparatus in terms of undermining independent political power, Pan-African power, revolutionary control, resistance from the young among the youth in ECOWAS. It's heavily involved with the French in destabilizing Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, who withdrew from ECOWAS and sacked the French and sacked the Americans from their territories. The Americans have relocated in certain respects to Ghana, to the Ivory Coast, and to Benin. And right now in Ghana, there's a construction for a drone base to replace the lost drone base in Burkina Faso, in Niger. So if I was a Black capitalist looking to make some money and not caring about the poor or the wretched of the earth, yeah, Ghana would be the place to go. If I was a Rick Ross, yeah, I would buy me a big house here, get me a slick car, and hang out with the elite here in Ghana like they've been doing. All of these Negro musicians and actors, they find Ghana a wonderful safe haven because Ghana, amongst all of its ECOWAS nations, is the one that has the most peaceful environment. It provides a certain modicum of freedom for people with money. If you broke in Ghana, that's your ass. You have to have some type of income. You have to have income flow. The real estate market is out of control. The cost of living in Ghana for many expats is similar to the cost of living in the United States. You have people who are renting houses or compounds, and you got to remember, I'm saying renting them for like $1,200, $1,500 a month. Dollars a month. And that's comparable to getting a studio apartment in New York. You see what I'm saying? So overall, if I was a Black capitalist looking to, start up my own business and don't have to look at white folks every day, yeah, Ghana would be the spot. But if I was a revolutionary Pan-African, I would prefer to be someplace where Africans are kicking crackers out the country. And that's but my French, unfortunately, I have poor French. And otherwise, I'd have offloaded to Burkina Faso like last year. You understand? But my French is terrible, so I'm struggling here. So I guess that answers. I would hope that answers your question.
We're gonna send our brother Biko, who you know,
Biko.
We're gonna send him and Boona to help you out. So we'll see how that go. Hey, I said Biko, you're in trouble if I send him with you.
Yeah. Biko, my man. Yeah.
But nah, no doubt. So you all, Natasha, Isaac, you have questions for Dhoruba?
I'm gonna ask my question really quick because after my question, I'm gonna have to get off. But I definitely appreciate being here with you, Dhoruba, and I think you have one of the best names I've ever heard. But I was thinking as you were talking before about, just in terms of the opposition that exists and thinking about how like in every time period, like we're always having this same opposition when we think about, revolutions, uprisings, just mass movement for, toward our protracted struggle for liberation, that we're always having this same constant. And I think even too, like you would say, like when you think about like the middle class, opposing Garvey, or even thinking about when they infiltrate, like during the Black Power movement, with people from any class, right? Especially thinking about, how they could use those who are in the lower classes who don't have the means, or those who have had to deal with the prison system and use them in that kind of way to infiltrate organizations. What have you learned from, or what are your thoughts on seeing this? How do we deal with this in our time, thinking about how we deal with this continuous fight that we know is going to come, because the system will support people who and there's money in recreating, and the same things that, like you were saying with Garvey, he's creating the UNIA, but you have a lot of people who mimic what he does for their own capitalistic gains. And we even have that today, where people will mimic being a real revolutionary organization just so that they can get money off of it, because they want to get to a certain level within the system. So if you could speak a little to that, like in our time, how do we start to really learn the lessons from the past, since we've seen this happen so many times over and over again?
Well, I think one of the first things we should understand, and I use this term a lot, is that history never repeats itself. It rhymes. It rhymes. There was, and though some things that are revolutionary today might turn out to be reactionary 20 years from now under different circumstances. And I'll give you a few examples. If we look at Europe and the so-called evolution into the modern Renaissance and the modern age, we go to history classes and we learn in Europe about the Dark Ages, right? And the Dark Ages is supposed to have been a period in time in which education and understanding and it was severely limited. The Europeans were in the dark. They didn't have understanding of nature. They didn't have an understanding of science. They were basically backwards. And the real learned people were in the monasteries. They were in the church. These were the people that could actually read. Well, I've always said that the Dark Ages weren't dark in Europe because people couldn't see. It was dark in Europe because they were blind, you see, and so once they received some enlightenment, they moved on. So things that were maybe revolutionary in the days of Marcus Garvey, today would be reactionary. So we need to go and look at these things historically, our radical histories, so that we won't reinvent failure. So that we understand that there's many victories that we've won along the way, but we are not aware of those victories and how to take them to a new level. But once we begin to study, we begin to see those victories. And I could give you an example of that. We won in Mozambique against the Portuguese. We won in Angola. We won in Guinea-Bissau. We won in South Africa. But today, those governments in Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, and Angola are some of the most reactionary governments in Africa. You see, they're removing people from their lands in order to secure oil contracts and drilling contracts and mineral contracts. We see how the ANC had only got 40% of the vote after over 30 years of freedom, because they never gave back the land to the peasants of South Africa. So they won 40% of the vote for the first time. And who do they ally themselves with? They ally themselves with the party of apartheid, of the former apartheid rulers, their party, rather than with the EFF and Mulema and the left. So we see that repeating itself over and over again. And so we should learn from that. And apparently we haven't learned from that, because today we have a figurehead like Kamala Harris, and we have brothers who we thought were revolutionaries putting up posters with Kamala Harris on the same page with Malcolm X and other Black revolutionaries, saying that their struggles were culminating in Kamala Harris's power. They did that with Obama, the bomber in chief. Obama killed more Africans than any other president in history with his drone programs and with his interventions in Somalia and the overthrow and murder of Gaddafi, and his interventions in the Sudan, and his interventions in Ethiopia. So we need to understand that we've always had the struggle with the Black elite who has sided with white supremacy and the white supremacist construct in order to secure power. And so we should understand what we have to do with them as a consequence. We know the role that they're going to play. You see, look at the face of U.S. foreign policy. The head of the United States mission to the United Nations is a black woman. The head of the United States Defense Department is a former black general. The spokesperson for the Biden administration is a young black woman. And Vice President of the United States is a woman of color. So the face of white supremacy and imperialism abroad today is essentially black. You see, and so how is that? I mean, this was impossible in Garvey's time. You understand? But he had to deal with the domestic itinerations of these types of people. The same way, like today, as I speak, there's a whole tour of Africans from America coming here in the next month, I believe. And they're talking about how they're coming to look at Ghana, and this is an unprecedented visit to the motherland, and for all of us, and it is for all of us when you come to Africa for the first time. It's an unprecedented experience because we were raised in the cockpit of white supremacy, and we have always had to deal with white folks' definitions of everything. You see, so when we come to Africa and we don't see white faces in high places, we think that we've arrived, but that's not true. We know from our experiences that black faces in high places do not translate into black power, does not translate into black independence and control of our resources by black people. We could look at Newark, for example. We see the history in Newark. It was black nationalists that got the first black mayor of Newark elected after the Newark riots, you know, and we've inherited black mayors ever since, and the people in Newark are just as homeless, just as powerless as they always were, except we got a new iteration of blackness in the mayor because he came out of somewhat of a radical tradition and a radical history. So he's managed to offload funds and programs to street gangs and street movements and everything. But his major ally is still the police union. His ability to get elected is based on his relationship to the Democratic Party and to the white supremacist construct that is New Jersey. If he wants to stay in power or move to another level. So we need to understand that that our history informs us, as Malcolm said. The history is the best subject to reward all research. But we have to have a historical materialist view of history and not an idealistic view of history, and understand that our enemy kept notes and kept records. They have institutional memory and we don't. And because we don't have institutional memory, we don't remember those things that we won, those battles that we won, and how those battles have been turned against us today. For instance, we won the Voting Rights Act in '64. And when the pushback of the Voting Rights Act was by 1974, the majority of unemployed black men and women were in prison. We had the rise of the prison industrial complex. Many of the voters, people that could have voted in the urban areas, now had felonies and couldn't vote. So there were different pushbacks against our victories until the point where the Civil Rights Bill of 1964 is nothing but a symbolic act. It's become a symbolism. It hasn't been a turning point in the empowerment of black people, because all it's done is got black faces in high places with no political power. So we need to understand that when we call for something like the United Front, we're taking these class contradictions and these pressures into consideration. So when we say, as a principle of the United Front, that all members of the United Front oppose the police state and the militarization of police and demand the release of all political prisoners. Okay, anybody that doesn't want to join the front because they think there are no political prisoners in the United States is clearly on the wrong side of the barricade. So we really don't need them in the United Front now, do we? So these are certain principles that we have to put forward based on our historical experiences, so that these things don't come back and bite us. And I just want to say, just because we understand these things, doesn't mean that what we create today doesn't have a determination, and that determination will create something else in the future. I'm looking at the Black United Front, a national united front against fascism and white supremacy at this historical moment as the building block for an independent political party in the next 4 years after we go through the crucible of Project 2025. as outlined by the Heritage Foundation and the racist right in this country. And we have to remember both political parties are signed on to the proposition and the principles of Project 2025. If don't get it twisted, the Democratic Party is not a refuge for African people or for people of color or for migrants. The Democratic Party is a place where Black folks go to die, just Black folks go to become irrelevant. And we have to take that position. We have to take that position solidly. That's the reason why we would support an independent candidate. But when people are talking about where would we go if we don't go to the Democratic Party, they don't even know a Cornel West and a Jill Stein and a Claudia Dela Cruz exists. You see? And so what does the Democratic Party do? It spends millions and millions of dollars to make sure that the Cornel West and the Jill Steins and the Green Party are not on the ballot in states where they are on the ballot, because they're saying they're taking votes away from them. They're taking Black votes and poor people's votes and immigrants' votes away from the Democratic Party. Well, how could they have their cake and eat it too? If these third party candidates are irrelevant and have no real sway and only garner 2 or 3% of the vote, if at that, how could they be a threat to the Democratic Party, who has billions of dollars, who have corporate investors, who are registered everywhere, and who have mayors and city councilmen in power? How is those third parties a threat? They're a threat because of the idea and the notion of a third political force in America that was sabotaged in Gary, Indiana, in the early 70s by the likes of the Jesse Jacksons and the Maynard Fergusons and those individuals that became the elite of the Democratic Party. So we have to take these lessons and use them in a revolutionary and a radical way, and organize ourselves that way. And I just want to say that those contradictions are going to keep arising, and there's a lineage between the bootlickers of today and the Negro bootlickers of yesterday. They have a continuum. They are from the same class. They have the same purpose. It's just the empire has changed. Means of communications have changed. We're living in a global village where what happens today, what happens 10 minutes ago in Africa is in front of us on TikTok and on Netflix and on YouTube instantly. This wasn't the case in the years of Marcus Garvey. So we got to give him his props if he organized millions of Africans into the UNIA, and they were paying $1 each for dues. $1 each from 1 million Black folks was $1 million back then. You see? So, and he did this without the internet, without podcasts, without Black Power media. You understand? He did it. You see? So
he's a bad dude. He's a bad dude to do it without Black Power media. Man.
Yeah, what would we do? What would we do?
Lord have mercy. I could be going crazy right now. But anyway.
Yeah, so all I'm simply saying is, yeah, we're going to continue to have these class contradictions until the class system of white supremacy and capitalism is relegated to the dung heap of history, and people begin to operate based on our humanitarian interests and our ability to love each other and love each other's potentials as people, as human beings. We got to remember that white supremacy is a construct that was invented in the latter part of the 18th century. This is not something that's always been around. Black has not always been evil. The idea of a white Santa Claus sliding down the chimney and still coming out white is a construct, you see? And it's the same way with the white Jesus. We all know that December 25th is not the birthday of Esau ibn Maryam, as he's called in the Quran, and Jesus Christ, as he's called in the Christian faith. But we have white evangelical Christian nationalists who are solidly behind the European settler state, Zionist state of Israel, because they're looking at that as the basis for the rapture and the return of Jesus. So if Jesus returns as the white man that they think, what does that mean for us, Black folks? If Jesus comes back, looking like what's his name? What's that boy's name? looking like Bon Jovi or somebody. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? We in big trouble on if that's the case. So if there's no other reason to start
wait. Nah, you ain't gonna just say that and just move on.
No, I'm just saying that there's
you're
no
gonna say
other.
Charleston Heston or somebody. You
Yeah, well,
said
you
Bon
know what I
Jovi.
mean, man. It's hard for me.
John Bon Jovi.
But no, I mean, it's hard for me to find. It's hard for me to find European stereotypes as easy as it is for them to stereotype us. So I got to search sometimes, you know. So
Living
I
on
just
a
came
prayer.
up with, I could have came up with Clint Eastwood, man. But you know,
You can't. John Bon Jovi was it. And like I said, living on a prayer. So
I mean,
think you might be
the
right.
Orange Man claims to be the reincarnation of Christ. He said he said by the great that if he's reelected, there ain't gonna be no more elections because it ain't gonna be necessary. You understand what I'm saying? So he's basically saying it's this is all about a Christian ethno-nationalism, which brings us home to why when black folks say, well, we ain't got no interest in the European settler state of Israel, that struggle doesn't concern Palestine struggle doesn't concern us. They need to understand that white supremacy and ethno-nationalism is the reason why these crackers are arming themselves to the teeth and look at black folks here in America as taking over their privileges and taking over their country, and we need to be put in our place. And meanwhile, what are we talking about? We're talking about passing a bill, you understand, an anti-discrimination bill against black folks. We have an anti-discrimination bill against LGBTQ. We have an anti-discrimination bill against women. We have an anti-discrimination bill against Asians. We have an anti-discrimination bill coming through supposedly against Muslims. But is there any anti-discrimination bill against white supremacy oppressing black people? No, because the white supremacist construct doesn't look at us as an entity worthy of consideration. Only when I'm ready to go off. I don't even want to go there. So anyway, so I'm saying we're always going to have these class contradictions amongst black folks, and we have to raise the principle struggle and make a clear line of demarcation between ourselves and them. Who's on what side of the barricades right now? We are on the side of the downtrodden, the oppressed people, the barefoot masses, those who are unemployed and null and void, can't vote, and they vote don't mean nothing, who's homeless, who don't have no power. These are the people we're on the side of, you see. Right. And those other folks who are talking that yik-yak shit about gentrification and that black folks need to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, and talking black capitalism and how we are the second or third richest nation on earth because we could buy a lot of shit, because we have consumer power. And if we got consumer power, what are we consuming? The US dollar, which we see now, is basically worthless. It's a worthless piece of paper. The United States is over $30 trillion in debt, but we're talking about giving us reparations. I mean, how abstract can we get here? We know the historical roots of reparations has always been as a consequence of a defeat of a nation state in war or of an aggressive party in war. We don't have a state. And I don't even know if the nation state is really, nationalism is any longer a valid expression of self-determination for anybody, because a lot of the nationalist governments that used to be revolutionary are now reactionary. So, I mean, we got a lot on our plate here. But the first thing to do is to get through the current period, and so that we will survive the collapse of capitalism, the reauthorization, the remanagement, or the reconstruction of the white supremacist hegemony. We have to survive this. The only way we're going to survive this is to understand that all politics is local, to take control of the local political machinery on our level, to deconstruct the political power and the influence of the military in our community. That means to decentralize the police. That means to take public control of public safety. That means to train our young people on why the black community needs to be defended against criminals, against all of those who will commit violence in our community, against our people, I mean, this is our task right now. And I think that, right now, we're not looking too good. Don't look too good for the home team. You know, this is like the 9th inning. There's 2 outs. You know, there's nobody on base. The count is 3-2 at the bat, and that's us. The next pitch, if it's a swing and a miss, we out. If it's a hit, we walk to first base, and we might get one of those Negro Leagues or stalwarts up at the bat that can knock home runs into the speaker, point into the stands, and knock the ball into the home run, and we got 2 points up on them. But right now, it don't look too good for the home team.
Well, we are live. This is Rise Up Morning Show. We looking for Reggie Jackson and Hank Aaron to take us all the way.
Yeah, that's right. Their spirit. Their spirit. You know.
Well, Reggie's still with us, man. Don't push Reggie out yet. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to Reggie Jackson, because Reggie Jackson I just saw something recently where he was talking about how racist these spaces were when he traveled around, and how in some places he had to they had him sleeping on a couch because hotels wouldn't allow him in as a major league superstar because he was too black. You know what I'm saying? I'd seen him talking about that on ESPN. And the candy bars that Reggie had was pretty good back in the day, too. But anyway, you check it out, the Rise Up Morning Show. We got Dhoruba Ben Wahad, and he said it don't look too good for the home team. You know what I mean? We got Isaac over here inheriting the beef. Natasha left. She had to come back. She said, hey, you know what I'm saying? Where else could I be at 9 a.m. but the Rise Up Morning Show? Isaac, I think you've been dying for a question over here. He been like double dutch. He been waiting to jump in. He didn't know how to cut you off, though. I know how to do it. What are you talking about, Isaac?
I think, for one, thank you, Dhoruba, for what you said. There's a lot of things, mostly everything I align with. There's one thing that I highlighted in my mind that you said, and it was one of the last things that you had mentioned. And it was in regards to, individuals not knowing that there are third-party candidates out there that they could be voting for, and how that is by design through the hegemonic forces that is the Democratic, the DNC, the Democratic Party, essentially making it physically impossible, virtually impossible for people like Cornel West, Jill Stein, Claudia De La Cruz to get on the ballots that they're already on, which, for some doesn't, that if that makes sense to you, it really doesn't, for these individuals to have to go through that. What my question to you is that in the midst of Kamala Harris being labeled as the new primary for the DNC, we are seeing a plethora, a swarm of the diaspora that are basically choosing Black girl power versus not aligning with genocide, kind of similar to how Barack Obama was elected into office, where they're looking at just a black face in a high place rather than looking at what their track record has been for a plethora of 20 years. What do you say to individuals right now? Because there's this argument on TikTok going on there that you're anti-black if you don't support Kamala this election, which I think is beyond me. What do you say to individuals that believe?
It's obvious that people that pass this mass line is the mass line of the Democratic Party, or the duopoly system, that somehow the president, the chief executive of the government, is really the one that's calling the shots in terms of U.S. foreign policy, in terms of U.S. domestic policy. There's a cabal of forces in the establishment, in the oligarchy, who define the shots. I mean, we could just look at the U.S. support for the European settler state of Israel as an example. They're supporting them in the midst of a genocide that's being broadcast daily on television. They're sending bombs made and manufactured in the United States. And that's because the U.S. military-industrial complex functions off of war. The United States and capitalism cannot make a profit unless there's a war or the threat of war. So every trade agreement that the United States, arms trade agreement that the United States makes with the so-called allies abroad, benefits a certain class and a certain industry in the United States. Boeing not only makes passenger airlines, it makes bombers and drones, you see, and it has ironclad contracts with the United States military and the United States government, who needs these bombers and drones to maintain its empire. And that means that the United States empire, it translates into the United States empire, the United States has over 1,000 military bases around the world. And when we and their major enemy, they're talking about the major enemy of the United States, of course, is China and Russia and Iran now. And why is China the major enemy? Although China doesn't have 1,000 military bases anywhere. You see, Iran doesn't have any military bases outside of Iran. Neither does Russia. You see, but the United States has 1,000 military bases, hundreds of drone operations, military personnel. Some know, and it's being revealed right now, military personnel on the ground in Gaza with the IDF. We know that the Israeli Shin Bet and police train with U.S. Police and domestic police, and with the various police agencies of the EU, the European Union, former colonizers of Africa. So when we look at the present state of affairs today, and we say to ourselves, well, supporting Kamala Harris, if you don't support Kamala Harris, you don't support Black women. Well, I'm going to say something. We got through the bullwhip days. We got through Jim Crow. We got through the feudalism of sharecropping. We got through segregation. And we got through that shit together. Black men and Black women. We didn't get through it by, men didn't get through it by themselves without sisters. The sisters didn't get through it by themselves without Black men, even though their babies was being snatched from their breasts and sold in the bullwhip days. We can't never forget that shit. And the minute that we forget it, we come up with a Kamala Harris who, up until recently, didn't even consider herself Black. She emphasized her Indian heritage and all of that stuff. Well, that's good, because India are people of color who were also colonized by the British. So the British either colonized her mama's mind, or they colonized their daddy's mind when they was in Jamaica. Either way, girlfriend is colonized. And so I want to say that this idea of Black woman, Black girl magic is somehow going to translate the power paradigms of European nation state and the European settler state that depends on war in order to survive is totally mythical. The only thing that's going to come out of this is that if there's a nuclear exchange between now and the end of December, a tactical nuclear exchange, it'll be a Black woman that presided over Armageddon. So they'd be able to blame it on a Black woman. The world came to an end when they had a Black female president. That's when the world came to an end. Man, if it wasn't for her, we'd still be around. You see? So she's cruising for a bruiser, you know, and she won't control Jack. She won't even be the real nigga on the trigger. You see? So I just want people to understand, if they understand power and the power of the nation state, in the national security state and how it operates. Everybody knows that Joe Biden, you know, Sleepy Joe, you know, that dude, you understand? This dude is walking around, he's senile and comatose. You know, everybody knows he ain't calling no shots. I mean, if you're delusional to believe that Joe Biden is actually determining U.S. foreign policy and how we roll, you're a fool. And it's the same way if the orange man got in power, except he's a little more egotistical and self-centered. So he'll mess up stuff on purpose based on his ego. In many ways, we're probably better off with him because he's locked on stupid. You know, at least you can manipulate Kamala to appear intelligent, to appear, and appease to the majority of our population that has been abused and misused by the misogyny of white supremacy in the political system. Our sisters have been abused by patriarchy and white supremacy since the day we was born here, the day we was kidnapped and brought here. So to misconstrue that struggle as if its resolution, its penultimate achievement is a Kamala Harris, is a complete blasphemy on the Fannie Lou Hamers. It's a blasphemy on the Sojourner Truths and all those sisters who fought for our liberation and fought for our freedom. So I don't think that supporting Kamala Harris is qualitatively different than supporting the white supremacist construct that is the Democratic Party or the Republican Party.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for clearing that up, because people do get it twisted. They think just because she is an individual who now, like how you stated, is claiming her Black card, You know, I find it, you know, to be funny that now everybody who is against her now is for her because she's a part of the primary, just solely based off of the fact that she is from the diaspora. For individuals, you
But
know,
I just want to add too that you have articulate people who are getting on there quoting her record, her voting record.
yes,
As you know, quoting her record that she was for this reform and she was for that reform. You understand? And the bottom line, and to refute all of this, is that we know from history and from our experience that you cannot reform white supremacy. So
exactly.
all of these reforms that she might have championed, that she might have put into place, yes, they might have benefited individuals, but white supremacist construct is not an individual construct. You see, and to dismantle it, to abolish it, means that you have to be an abolitionist. Frederick Douglass wasn't about reforming slavery now, chattel slavery. He was about its abolishment. Okay, and it's the same way we have to look at this construct that is coming apart at the seams as we speak. You know, there's a reason why Black history, the telling of the truths of our story, is being outlawed in the schools and in the curriculum, because education is not designed to raise individuals into free thinkers. Education is designed to train workers and those who are going to man the system into the thinking and the standards and the values of the most powerful class in society. And that's a dialectical understanding of the role of education in modern society. Once we understand that, then we could see that the white supremacists, the racists in Florida and Texas, we could see why they're burning books. We could see why they're banning critical race theory. They're doing their job. They're doing their job because they have to support the mythology and the delusion of white supremacy and how it's manifested itself in America, the United States today. And the United States today was what? A European settler state. You see, that's why they in lockstep with the Zionists. They all come from the same cloth. Canada, European settler state. Australia, European settler state. Okay, so we need to understand that we should be about abolishment, not reform. But that doesn't mean that reforms cannot have a tactical advantage in terms of organizing the masses of people around an issue that affects their lives immediately. So we're not struggling, or at least I'm not, and I'm not advocating that we struggle just to gain access to the electoral system, because the electoral system has a built-in safety valve, built-in trip value, and that's the Electoral College. The Electoral College was created by the so-called founding fathers to ensure that their wealth and their privilege and their power would never be taken from them by some uprising of the masses who decided to vote against their privilege. So the popular vote is not always the one that winds up registering as the deciding factor in the U.S. Electoral College system. It's the Electoral College vote. This is why all politics is local. These electors come from state and city governments and electoral, and they come from the two political parties that we are beefing about right now. That's where the electors come from. That's why Trump, in his last ditch effort on the January 6th, tried to tell his homeboy Pence, did not, throw this Electoral College crap out the window and put my electors in, you see, so he could hold on to power. They know that the Electoral College system is the fail-safe mechanism for white supremacy when the masses of people decide that white supremacy is no longer about what America should be about. And we know that horizon is close, is right on 10 years from now, when the U.S. will be a majority minority country. You see, the Electoral College system is really going to be in effect then. That's why you see local elections, local state elections, taking over school districts, taking over agencies on the state level is so important to white supremacy now, because of the Electoral College system.
No doubt. You're checking out the Rise Up Morning Show here on Black Power Media. Like they say in YouTube land, like, subscribe, share. We got a lot of powerful shows. We're on deck this morning with Dhoruba Ben Wahad, veteran Black Panther Party leader, PLA leader, former political prisoner, and brother who's calling on for a united front against fascism. We're going to go to a quick Black Power break. We got Isaac on the wheels of steel today, so we don't know who about to come up real quick. Hopefully Isaac don't give us one of them 20-minute breaks. You know how Isaac do. Isaac go smoke a blunt, Dhoruba.
You fucking wild.
I don't indulge no more, brother.
You indulge no more?
No,
you're a quitter now.
No, I'm a connoisseur of gummies and stuff like that, you know, for medicinal purposes.
No doubt, no doubt. Only on BPM could Dhoruba talk about his medicinal purposes of his gummies. We're going to go this quick Black Power break so he can get his medicinal up. Isaac can get his medicinal up. And Natasha, she already got her medicinal. I'm going to just go use the bathroom. TMI. But we'll be right back. Black Power Media Rise Up Morning Show. Let's go.
Thank you. Tonight I want to talk about two things. The politics of education and politics and education. Thing like that. It's two distinct and different things. Can you hear me? Okay. First of all, I want to give a little test though. I know you didn't expect to be tested when you came. But when you hear the word inflation, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? I hear a lot of people say money. Now, that's because you've been trained to think that when you hear the word inflation, you automatically think of money. But to inflate means to blow up. Right? Now, that's somebody who's trained. When a trained person hears the word inflate, he thinks of money. An educated person with cross references hears the word inflate, and he thinks about blowing up. So when people go around talking about inflating things, you know they have more than one meaning. Now, to go to another point, an example, Isaac Hayes is a good example of a cat who's been educated and not trained. He took the song, you know, that he sings, By the Time I Get to Phoenix. People thought that, you know, everything that could possibly be done to that song had been done, until my man took it and turned it all the way around. He was an educated person. See, a trained person operates on the basis of no cross-references. In other words, you cannot apply cross-references. An educated person can apply cross-references. Now, with this in mind, when we began to look at the type of system, see, that America allows through her education and through her training as a fact, you find out that the whole mobility for cross-references has been limited and almost eliminated as far as black people are concerned and oppressed people in this country. Politics, we have to have a reevaluation of politics. See, we've been taught to think that when the word politics is mentioned, as we're talking about Democratic and Republican Party. That's not the case. See, politics concerns everything that you do. Everything that happens in your life is political. The real question is, whose political end does it serve? If it does not serve your political end, then it is not beneficial for you to be political in that fashion. Now, the problem, again, back to the whole thing of politics, the politics of education in this country. The problem with Negro was not the word itself. It was that a stereotype had been attached to that word, Negro, and that people were forced to live in accordance to that stereotype. In other words, you know, Negroes lived in constant fear of being, you know, like proven not sufficiently trained. In other words, if you split a verb in front of a blood a few years ago, who was a Negro, you split a verb, and that cat almost died for you. Because what you were doing, you were reflecting that you were not trained. Not educated, that you were not trained. You see, and some of the most, you know, like so-called intelligent, some of the most educated people in the country are the most unintelligent people in the country. A good example would be Nixon, Johnson, all of these people with college degrees. You know, they have their education, they're trained. But they are unintelligent also. So that shows you that the type of education that's given in the country, the type of training, which is really training that's given in the country, has very little to do with the intelligence of a person. Now, students, for an example, you see, you're students either by accident or coincidence. But you're black, and that's a fact. You're oppressed, and that's a fact. And to deal with the reality of that oppression, you must begin to look at your situation as students secondary and as being oppressed first. And the skills that you acquire as a result of being education, how can we utilize those skills to eliminate that oppression? That becomes the question for students. Again, when you begin to understand the whole system of education in this country, see, whatever you don't control can be used as a weapon against you. Anything that you don't control can be used as a weapon against you. Education has been used as a weapon against black people because black people have been trained to think a certain way. See, we do not control politics, so politics as it's known in this country is a weapon against black people. And when we begin to examine what politics is, we find out it's no more than the apex of white cultural aggression, nothing more. When a man tells you that you can only become free through voting, then he is restricting your mobility. He's restricting your freedom. You were born free. You must exercise your rights to be free. See, that man cannot give you freedom. But when he restricts an individual and tells him that he can only become free by voting, then he has denied you your freedoms. He says this is politics. The only way you can become free is by being political in the white sense, or in the sense of this country. But politics in this country, you see, the whole thing, it refers again back to what Camus once raised. He says, what better way to enslave a man than give him the vote and call him free? Does black people absolutely no good to be able to vote unless we can choose who we're voting for? Then when it goes down and you begin to dwell and look further into the political system of this country, you find out that there is no political party that's anti-property. So where do we fit in? Whether that property is us, or whether that property is land, or whether that property is a Cadillac, or whether that property is a credit card. No party in this country is anti-private property, anti-gain, personal gain. No party. So where does black people and oppressed people fit into a political system like that? That tells us that we must begin to reevaluate the whole connotation that's been given to politics in this country. See, politics...
What's happening? What's happening? This is the Rise Up Morning Show. That was Imam Jamal Al-Amin, excuse me, H-Rap Brown, now known as Imam Jamal Al-Amin. Dhoruba, Imam Jamil, you know, did you all have a relationship? I mean, we you know, I never, I don't know if we ever talked about that. I know that, you know, of course, we've been in the community together. And for the record, I actually came to Atlanta in 2004 in support of Imam Jamil's case, and that's part of the reason that I'm here. He is my imam. I have bayat to Imam Jamil, but I want to know. I mean, you know, for folks who don't know, I know you all come out of New York, or worked in New York rather. I know he didn't come out of New York, but did you all have a relationship at all, or?
Yeah, Imam Jamil Al-Amin, you know, I had bayat to him as well back when he got out of prison. We were in prison together for a few years. We were in Greenhaven together. In fact, I was one of the editors of the prison newspaper, Open Gate, and I had, when Imam Jamil came to Greenhaven after he was sentenced. I think he was sentenced to 7 years or something. When he came to Greenhaven, you know, I immediately put an application in for him to be on Open Gate newspaper. And man, did we go through some changes. They didn't want him on the newspaper. They didn't want him to move around the prison, you know, and eventually they conceded halfway. They allowed him to be on the Open Gate newspaper, and but he couldn't move around the prison. And also the St. Corey Mosque was in effect. It was one of the first Sunni mosques in the New York prison system. It was the imam of that mosque was a former bodyguard of Malcolm X. So, you know, when Imam Jamil came to prison, the first place, of course, when he was captured only several weeks after I was captured and put on trial, and in New York. He was in the tombs. We were in the tombs together. He was on one floor and I was on another. In fact, I believe it was Noah Abdul Qayyum, that we know as Noah Washington, one of the New York Three BLA members, who gave Imam Jamil his shahada in prison. So Imam Jamil has always been a well-respected, a beloved a comrade. Him and Kwame Ture, that we know as Stokely Carmichael, were both leaders in SNCC, and at a crucial point in radical history when the Black Panther Party was on the ascendancy and SNCC was being torn apart by divisions brought on by the counterintelligence program, and that heightened its division after Brother Ricks and others raised their fists and declared Black Power. You know, liberal white support evaporated for SNCC. And SNCC underwent some serious contradictions, and both Imam Jamil and Kwame Ture were enlisted and drafted into the Black Panther Party as the Minister of Education and
Minister of Justice. Minister of Justice.
And Minister of Justice, yeah. So having been in the party at that time, then I was a field secretary out of New York chapter. So we had that type of organizational relationship, but mainly SNCC. Many members of the original party in New York came from SNCC. Were young student activists in SNCC. So in fact, we used some of the same facilities as New York SNCC office when the party first emerged in New York. I believe in the spring and summer of 1968. Spring of 1968. Yeah. And so, yeah, 68, 67. Yeah, the late 67, I'm sorry. Late 67, the winter of 67. So, yeah, Imam Jamil was always in the forefront of our struggle. In fact, the terminology that we use for the generational rap music comes from his ability to rap. His middle name was Rap, and because he could go somewhere and in a matter of moments galvanize thousands of young Black voices and young Black people into a coherent understanding of what they need to do and how they need to do it. And so, in fact, the government passed the anti-Rap Brown clause of traveling interstate to incite riots, because everywhere Imam Jamil went, rebellion followed, literally in his wake. Sometimes before he even got in the car and left, they was cleaning stuff up. So he was a very effective organizer, very effective speaker, and that translated to when he became imam. When he became an imam, there were forces inside the prison system that were trying to neutralize him as a Muslim, and trying to neutralize him when he came out. He had to fight a serious battle against the establishment Muslim ulema, or that is the so-called learned class of Muslims who didn't believe that his conversion, his embrace of Islam was sincerely fi Allah, solely for Allah. They believed, many folks did at that time, that he was just using Islam for a cover for his revolutionary politics. So he had to overcome that. And I think he overcame that with his book, Revolution by the Book, his first seminal writing as the imam. And so, because Imam Jamil was always an upright a brother who never said what he was going to, never said that he was going to do something and didn't do it, who kept his word. Many Muslims who came out of the Dar movement, which is another whole history, Kalanji, that you might have to delve into with some Islamic Muslim, the Dar Islam movement out of the East Coast in New York, that had literally thousands of young Muslims in their ranks. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and many of them got their initial understanding of Islam from the Dar Islam movement, and so Imam Jamil garnered a considerable amount of respect from what we call indigenous Muslims, Black Orthodox Muslims in America. And many of these imams took bayat or allegiance to him, and subordinated themselves to him. And it was for this reason that he was targeted, and because of his history and that type of a national development as a Muslim leader, that he was targeted and framed for the killing of these police officers.
So let me ask you this, D, because I think that when we talk about political prisoners, Imam Jamil Al-Amin as Imam Jamil and as H. Rap Brown, historically, his track record is probably longer than most of the folks who are, and that's no disrespect, than most current political prisoners that we acknowledge, right? You would think that he would have the backing and the following, and he would have the quote unquote popularity of like our comrades Mumia or Leonard, right? Why do you feel that that Imam Jamil Al-Amin or H. Rap Brown isn't at the forefront of our fight for political prisoners when you talk about the politics of liberation, going back, his you mentioned his history as far as being the chairman of SNCC, the Minister of Justice for the Black Panther Party, our Ummah, our national Ummah. He headed over 30 different masjids around the country. You know what I mean? He has followings around the world, so on and so forth. He was there, he did it, so on and so forth. Why is it that the average African here in America or abroad knows nothing about Imam Jamil Al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown?
Well, to put it in a word, it's because he's Muslim, because of his Islam. Because when he transitioned from, quote, the radical revolutionary Black power advocate to Imam Jamil Al-Amin, that signaled a whole step up and a whole different dimension of his significance for Black folks. You have to remember, when Imam Jamil Al-Amin emerged from prison, Islam was the fastest growing religion in North America. And then came the first Trade Center bombing, and then came the 9/11, and then came the and before all of that, of course, was the struggle to unseat Gaddafi and to demonize Muslims, and especially domestic Muslims, indigenous Muslims in America. This is one of the reasons why today the major spokespersons for Muslims in the United States are not Black. They're immigrant Muslims. They're migrant Muslims. They're Muslims that come from Pakistan, from India, from former British colonies. There's a reason for that the major political spokesmen for Islam in the United States are not Black. And we have Black Muslims who are just as much scholars in Islam as any scholar sitting in Cairo to this day, you see. And so it's because the reason why Imam Al-Amin is not given his props, is not in the forefront of this, is precisely because of Islamophobia and the U.S. campaign to neutralize Muslims in the United States. And Imam Al-Amin and the 30 or so imams that had bayat to him across the country were also as radical and as he was. Many of them too had emerged from the struggles in the Black Panther Party. You see, so this was a type of brand of Islam that could not be allowed The type of Islam that could be allowed and could be permitted was the Islam that advocated black capitalism, was the Islam that advocated the Messianic understanding of white supremacy, where, with the mothership and all of that stuff. And these could be tolerated, but Islam that expressed solidarity with the Muslims in Western Asia, that expressed solidarity with the Palestinians, that expressed solidarity with Muslims fighting against apartheid and white supremacy. No, that could not be tolerated. And so this is the reason why today you do not have a national or significant black Muslim leader, but you have immigrant Muslims who are in the Democratic Party, who are talking about Muslim votes for the Democrats and all of this stuff. So it's because of Imam Jamil's Islam. And also, and this is not to disparage or denigrate the efforts of Muslims who've been trying to free Imam Jamil, but their campaign has been decidedly narrowed and insular, and it has not reached out to the radical black movements and drew on Imam al-Amin's history and his iconic role in the development of ideas and concept of black self-determination and black power. So in some respects, mostly, it's because Imam Jamil was an articulate, politicized Muslim. Is the reason why he's been curtailed, and his campaign and his supporters have played into that, and this is probably for good reasons, because they don't want the image of their imam or Imam Jamil to be sullied by ideas and notions of what's considered in Islam as bid'ah, which is nationalism and innovation. And so Imam Jamil had to fight a serious struggle for years to prove that his Islam was genuine, that he was not, that black struggle for freedom is the struggle vis-a-vis Allah. The struggle for any people for liberation and freedom is the struggle ordained by Allah. Say, oh, he who believes, who will stand for justice and freedom and equality, if not but you. You are the best evolved of humankind. You enjoin what's right and you forbid what's wrong. And Imam Jamil al-Amin has tried to live by that and has lived by that, in my estimation, all of his life. And so I think that he's been isolated because of his Islam, because of his potential to galvanize Muslims across ethnic and racial lines in the United States to fight white supremacy and to stand against what we call tagut or fitna. So I think that's the reason.
No doubt. We have about 10 minutes left. We're here with Dhoruba bin Wahad. We're talking about Imam Jamil al-Amin, formerly H. Rap Brown. If you're not familiar with H. Rap Brown, we suggest you get a late pass, go back, check out some of his work, check out his work as H. Rap Brown, check out his work as Imam Jamil al-Amin. In the community right here in Atlanta, he established the first full-time masjid in Atlanta, but he also cleaned up the community of the West End, where there was heavy drug dealing, rape. You know what I'm saying? I heard stories of a certain motorcycle gang cutting pigs up and letting the blood flow in the street, and just all types of different open drug markets, so on and so forth. Imam Jamil came through, cleaned it up, and told folks it will that type of behavior would no longer be tolerated. I understand that they didn't take him serious at first, and that the particular motorcycle club where they met at is now where we pray at. So I don't have to tell you who won. You know what I'm saying? But that's what we have Juma service for that. So you can decide, you can fill in the blanks from there. But indeed, he was accused of murdering a police officer, a sheriff deputy, and wounding another. Of course, real quick, they claimed that the shooter was 5'8" or 5'9" with hazel brown eyes. Imam Jamil is 6'4" or 6'5". So of course, that's a whole nother story. They claim they caught him in Alabama. They claim the bullet traveled on the top of the hood of his car at 70 miles an hour, from Atlanta to Alabama, and they found that shell casing on top of the car. And just real quick, inside the courtroom, one of his attorneys put that shell casing on top of a desk and blew it lightly, and it rolled off. But miraculously, that shell casing held on all the way to Alabama. You know what I'm saying? So I guess it was magnetic. It's so much more to the story, but I'm just pointing out just some of the holes, the potholes in that particular case. We've been talking about this whole Black United Front Against Fascism, Dhoruba. We've been talking about what's going on all over the place. As far as the Sahel, we talked about, and these are talks that we've had. We haven't had them on here, so of course we're going to invite you back on to the platform. We just ran through 2 hours so quick that it ain't even funny. But any words that you'd like to leave us with? And for folk, I'm just gonna put it out there, D. I'm just going to go rogue. I'm talking to this brother about getting a show on Black Power Media. So y'all, if y'all think that's a good thing, all in favor say aye.
Well,
and I speak for everybody who's in the chat right now.
I was on mute.
Well, I just want to close by saying, these are very crucial times for our people, for all of us, all oppressed people, and I don't think that that what we call so-called identity politics, that break down the different groups in our community who are oppressed on different levels, should be the major thrust of building a coherent, unified opposition to what's being done to Black people and people of color and women across the diaspora in the United States. I think it's very important for us to understand that we must build a united front. We're not talking about uniformity here. We're not talking about everybody being on the same page ideologically about everything. But we're talking about small organizations who are struggling in our community, having their struggle amplified in their relationship in a united front. We're talking about larger struggles that do have resources, being able to project their resources across a broader spectrum of struggle, and that we all agree on a certain set of principles that are directed at a common enemy, at a common force that is oppressing us all. And that this is very, very necessary for us to move to the next level of organization, which is to create a political entity that represents working people, poor people, women, and oppressed people of all stripe, a serious working class, a revolutionary political party, the type of party that our comrade George Jackson talked about, the type of party that our forefathers, Alombe Brath and other revolutionaries and Malcolm X dreamed about and talked about. You see, so I think task is on us now. And we have a young generation that's coming up that has had its eyes open in many respects by the militarized policing that are killing us on a daily basis, by the rise of cop cities and the militarization of police, with the genocide that's going on in Western Asia, with U.S. involvement in through its proxies in the Sahel and in Sudan and in Africa. We have a generation now that we have to educate, and this is one of the reasons why I'm thankful that programs like yours, alternative networks like yours, Black Power Media, Black Liberation Media, Rise Up, all of these programs. I think now you should focus more, not so much on investigating our past, but in developing an understanding of what the enemy is doing now and strategies and tactics that we can employ to thwart them in their efforts to subject us and dehumanize us and control us. So shout out to your podcast, and I do look forward to contributing in the future if it's possible. But like we had in our private discussion, this will require some degree of organization of activists who have information, who have tech skills, and who have access to the front lines to contribute and so we could create a common situation room, so to speak, a common focus, a center of gravity for information that could inform our intelligence, that could inform our organization. So I do look forward to participating on that level.
No doubt. We and indeed, for folks who are checking us out, we are absolutely growing, and I'd like to definitely thank the new shows, the new hosts like Isaac and Natasha and Buna, Fernando, Ikemba, the new shows we have with Professor Griff and Joy James and Jaleesa Jackson and that crew, and so many others that are coming on board as we speak. It is it's about growth. The magazine, Afro Pick, we keep talking about that because these are some of the things we're talking about when we're talking about communication. And we invite you all to come on board with the building of this United Front Against Fascism. If you want to learn more about that, make sure you go to the webpage, to the website, which is blackpowermedia.org, and leave us a note saying that you want to learn more about the United Front Against Fascism, and we'll certainly put you on to that. In fact, since we are live, we can go a couple more minutes if you all would like. I know Isaac is itching for a question, comment, or suggestion over there. You know what I mean? We were leaving Isaac hanging sometime, but yes, sir, Isaac. Isaac's inheriting the beef. What's happening, Isaac? What we got over there?
No, for one, I just want to say thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure to sit down and learn. To just be honest, I had a question, a request. I don't know if you do have time. I know you said you ain't interested in making new friends. You said that a couple episodes ago. I was wondering if you would accept an invitation to my network so that we could talk about you as a political prisoner, and just kind of get you to antiquated with my viewers and whatnot, so they can understand the importance of not just yourself but the movement that you were a part of, and then how we can compound on that. As you just said, as much as we should teach the past, we should also be contemporary and look at what they're doing now in the current context of white hegemony. So the invitation I leave to you, but as you stated,
unequivocally, I would be honored to come on your network and talk about what's relevant, and I think I could say to all of you, Kalanji and other brothers and sisters who may be listening, who are doing other podcasts, who are doing other alternative media, that all of you have a role to play, and you're all playing a crucial role, because the medium has become the message. We're living in an age where minds are influenced and reached through weaponization of data, through the use of algorithms, and now through the use of AI and other mechanisms. So I just want to say that I look at all of you, and the work you're all trying to do on that level is vital right now. Information is intelligence. Dr. Huey P. Newton, once my illustrious leader, said that power is the ability to define phenomena and make it act in a desired fashion. Well, if that's the case, then media is the mechanism and the instrument by which we use to define phenomena. And it's up to us as organizers and the people that are in the trenches as organizers to maximize their access to information and use that information in order to change the power paradigm of the people that they are trying to reach and they're struggling for. So yes, of course I'll accept the invitation from progressive folks everywhere. And I just don't want folks to think that I'm not at all sectarian. Well, I might be I'm opposed to certain things like pork chop preachers and opportunists. So I guess if that makes me sectarian, then I guess I'm sectarian. But when it comes to outside of the barricades, like I said, um, I'm not trying to advocate uniformity, or I'm not trying to denigrate any other nationalists who are fighting for the self determination of Black people, or Pan Africans who are fighting for the unity of the African people in the diaspora, or even uh, 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 people on the reparations front who are trying to hold the U.S. Finance capital, capitalist system to account for the atrocities that is committed on us. And I invite all of them to weigh in and get into a united front and contribute to an anti-fascist united front. Because what's facing us now is something that has faced Black people for centuries, and that is unbridled fascism. We have always been subjected to fascism and the unity or the marriage between finance, capital, and the state. And if anybody should be anti-fascist, it's African people in the diaspora, especially in the United States. So I think the call is appropriate now, and I do that in all humility. I don't consider myself, or will consider myself, some type of national spokesperson for the United Front. If should we build one, I'm content to do whatever people ask me to do, to contribute, and all of that stuff. I don't fish, but I would go fishing once we had the front, But yeah, so of course I'm open to appearing on other people's formats and forums. And I just want to give a shout out to the comrades and the brothers and sisters in Darul Janub in Austria, who have been struggling for the freedom of Imam Jamil Mumia Abu Jamal. They've been holding monthly vigils at the U.S. Embassy for the past couple of years. In the snow and in the sleet and in the rain and in the heat. They've been out there for our political prisoners. I just want to give them a shout out. They have been on the side of anti-fascism and anti-white supremacy. I have had the good fortune to work with them and to organize with them, and the same to one of the brothers and sisters from France there on your program. I came through there too, and they've been in the trenches fighting. So shout out to all of these folks from Istanbul to Beirut, from Beirut to Harlem, and from Harlem to Atlanta. And
hey, dig though, man. If you gonna shout Boona out, he ain't gonna wash his ear for a week. You know what I mean? So
yeah, shout out to Buddha, man. Yeah, man. I'm just saying, now is the time for us to really put our energies to work in not only building instruments, concrete instruments, and mechanisms of solidarity, not just rhetorical solidarity, but concrete instruments of solidarity, understanding full well that the enemy will define these connections as support for terrorism and somehow illegal. But we have to deal with empire. We have to deal with the collapse and the contradictions of empire, because as it begins to erode, it becomes far more virulent and violent and racist in its contraction. This is the time when unity is really important. So I just want to end with that.
No doubt, no doubt. Again, you've been checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. This is Black Power Media. Make sure you subscribe to the platform. Make sure if you're not on the email list, because we send out emails, and if you're not on it, you're going to miss something. Folks be like, we couldn't find the channel. I don't know what y'all was looking for. Type in Black Power Media Reloaded on YouTube, because we're reloaded and you can get what we got. You know what I mean? But otherwise, make sure you go to the website, which is blackpowermedia.org, and you can sign up for our email list. And we got a whole lot coming on. Like I said, tomorrow, make sure you tune in for the Rise Up Morning Show, but also tune in to Professor Griff's show, which comes on Arm the Masses ATM, which comes on every Wednesday at noon, 12 noon EST.
I'm on a podcast.
Oh, okay.
But
So Dhoruba's
I'll
on.
call you, give me a
Yeah. So we are working on a number of new shows and whatnot. So make sure you all tune in. But like I said, check out Professor Griff tomorrow. Now we have a special show. Now some of y'all ain't gonna be ready for this. We have a series that's gonna be coming out starting this Friday. And this particular series is on the Young Thug case. Yep, you heard it right. I know some of y'all listen like Young Thug, like what? Lost their damn mind up here. But it's on the Young Thug case, and a mutual comrade of Dhoruba and I have been pushing for us to meet with some of the folks from that team because she's compared this case to having similarities to the Panther 21 case. I know that we're going to be inviting Dhoruba on possibly next week. But as we close Dhoruba, I want, with that comparison, because there's some folks, when I say Young Thug, you know what I mean? They're probably looking like they not lost their damn mind. I want to know your thoughts on that because we both had the spill and we've both been threatened.
Yeah, Sister Love. Mama Marvel. She browbeat me for a year with this, man. And I realized that that the sister had, she because she had lived through the 21 case, and because her departed her husband, was one of the 21. She was really acutely aware of how the prosecution and the state was prosecuting this young man, this brother called Young Thug, and the similarities between this prosecution and how the state prosecuted the Panther 21 in the Chicago conspiracy trial against Bobby Seale and the Chicago 7. They came from their old playbook. Again, with conspiracy cases, with criminalizing the grand jury process, with coercing witnesses, and all of these things. And I think that what won me over from the sister's argument was that this is widespread. This is a national policy that came into existence after the murder of George Jackson in the prison movement. In 1971 is when the so-called profiling of gangs, the criminalization of Black lower class social relationships of our youth became a target of law enforcement, much the way that the Black Panther Party was targeted by COINTELPRO, because a lot of our recruits came from the so-called lumpen proletariat, the so-called unemployed class, the brothers from the streets. We thought and we believed, and I still believe to some degree now, that it's that class, it's that group that have a propensity or inclination to be more readily politicized and involved in the struggle on the streets, to become cadres and soldiers in the Black liberation movement. And because they already have a relationship to law enforcement, which is antagonistic. They already have an understanding that that white supremacy is manifested through the barrel of a gun, you see. And so, but they don't have the politics or the understanding of their radical history to understand how they are at a historical moment in time. While they're chasing the dollar, these crackers is chasing their ass. You see, and they believe that the dollar or that getting a contract is the way out of the hood. But at the same time, they have all of these beefs that they have with each other while they were growing up, territorial beefs. It's a ridiculous construct when you think about it, because they tried to do the same thing with Fred Hampton and the Peastone Rangers in Chicago. And Fred Hampton nixed that when he met with the head of the Peastone Rangers. And we have counterintelligence documents that show that the federal government, that the FBI, was trying to encourage Jeff Fort and the Peace Dome Rangers to look at the Black Panther Party as a threat in the streets. And Fred Hampton, I think some of that episode was presented in the Hollywood version of Fred's assassination. What was the name of it?
Lieutenant Black Messiah.
I think some of that episode was presented when Fred met with the leader of the Peace Dome Rangers, and they saw that the Black Panther Party was not a threat. In fact, the Black Panther Party was trying to get them to raise their consciousness and become an asset to the Black community rather than a deficit. And we know that historically, the Peace Dome Rangers subsequently evolved into a black organization that did just exactly that. And Jeff Fort and them were put in prison for collaborating with Muammar Gaddafi and all of this stuff when they became a quote Islamic sect. So we need to. I think that what the sister was pointing out about how the prosecution and the judge have collaborated behind closed doors in order to convict this young man, and based on his image, based on his influence in the community amongst young people, and how the prosecution is bringing this was also corrupted itself with or use the Crime and Control Act, what they call it,
the crime. You're talking about the 94 crime bill.
But they have a name for it that was originally used against the mafia.
The RICO charges. The RICO charges.
The RICO charges, and the RICO Act has been modified and used against Black street groups, street organizations, who are involved in illegitimate capitalist behavior, slinging drugs, and all of this stuff. This is all illegitimate capitalism that plays into how the government has focused on poor Black communities to destabilize them, to remove their capacity for coherency and political organization through drugs and criminalization of Black youth groups and organizations, street sets. So I think that that what Kalanji was saying, coming forward with an analysis and perhaps following this trial would be an educational process for an entire generation of young people who are now heavily into hip hop and rap music and not understanding how it's been used and employed in order to demilitarize and demilitantize the Black movement. Why political rap has faded away, and we have the opportunistic Black capitalists, started from the bottom. Now we hear rap, and throw my hands up in the air if you just don't care, all of that stuff. You see, so
you know what, real quick, man, because I know I'm doing Isaac, right? And I keep messing with Isaac, like we be saying we're gonna end the show, and he keep on going. I was just messing.
That's because y'all don't have no time constraints. Verily, by the token of time, man is at loss.
Look at this guy talking. Anyway, listen, on the real though, I want to address this because I think that, of course, as when I was talking to you off camera, when folks hear us talk about someone like Young Thug, they don't necessarily know the background of many of our freedom fighters, right? When you talk about street organizations, when you talk about so-called gangs, they forget that it had to be a Detroit Red for it to be a Malcolm X. You know what I'm saying?
Well, there had to be a torch before there was a Dhoruba bin Wahad.
I was getting to that. I was going to get to it, but that's the whole thing. You know, when we talk about folks like you, we talk about folks like Malcolm, we talk about folks like Kamasi, you talk about folks like me. You know, the rap song, one of the joints, he said, I only been a good for a minute though. You know what I'm saying? So the thing is, people judge based on what they think. And some people actually think they're thinking. The reality is, we have to be able to look at people and as Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, formerly Stokely Carmichael, talked about, there are people, we give them a chance, we give them an opportunity. A cat like Young Thug is 20-something years old. You understand what I'm saying? So he could be won over to the situation. I see what you're saying, Jared Boo in the chat, but the media did not support Detroit Red, and Detroit Red did not solicit revolutionary media support. I don't know what revolutionary media was out when Detroit Red was Detroit Red, but you might know more than me. That's all cool. But what we're saying, we're not even saying support. We're not here to say support Young Thug. We're bringing the facts. That's our job as media. No one questions the state when they watch Channel 2 or 11 Alive or whatever the case is. If they say this what happened, that's what happened. Here at Black Power Media, our job is to point out the contradictions. We try to do it. We're not trying to be biased. We're not trying to tell you to go buy Young Thug's record. We might say at the end of the joint, we might say, well, Young Thug might be a piece of shit, whatever the case is. But we're not going to forget the state's role in whatever's going on. You understand what I'm saying? It's easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater because the baby don't weigh much. You understand what I'm saying?
But I think also too, we need to point out, like in the Panther 21 trial, I think we'll get to it. Yes. Evidence against the Black Panther Party that was used to show that we were conspiring to kill people and all of this stuff was the Battle of Algiers.
That's right.
A docudrama. Was and in the Battle of Algiers, the focus in the Battle of Algiers was this brother, I think his name was Ali. He was a criminal. He was a pimp. He was a criminal, and FALN recruited him, and he became the most efficient and notorious freedom fighter of the FALN until the French put millions of francs a post in his head. You see, and so the Battle of Algiers was used to show that we were recruiting people from the streets and trying to transform them into revolutionaries. When we talk about Dr. Mutulu Shakur and his involvement using acupuncture, Dr. Shakur got involved in Think Lincoln, is when the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords took over the Lincoln Detox Center that was using methadone treatment, and we took it over, we occupied it, and we forbade methadone treatment to address heroin addicts. Instead, we gave them PE classes. We nursed them back to health, and he had to kick cold turkey, and we gave them PE classes. And out of Think Lincoln grew community health programs, community mental health programs. Dr. Mutulu went on to form acupuncture clinics and stuff like that. So people need to understand that we started from the streets, you know. I grew up hating police and not wearing a crease in my pants. That's how I grew up, and so I understand the role of armed agents of the state in our community. They were there to intimidate us. They were there to terrorize us. They were there to beat us into submission. And those of us who didn't succumb to that ultimately became revolutionaries. And many of my young brothers and sisters that I grew up with, you know, there's very few people that remember the days when we were gang banging. I don't know how many people I could bump into today that were alive then. You know, so this system
I was
killed
in New York one day. I was with you some years ago when we was in Harlem. I think we was going to Jazz House and ran into some brothers. They like Torch. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't they didn't know Dhoruba, they knew Torch. You know what I'm saying? And that
when I got out of prison, man, you know, I mean, when I walked out that courtroom and it was televised, and it was on, you know, how and the police was mourning about how a cop killer got away and all of this stuff, man. Brothers that came out the joint said, man, when we watched the news, man, everybody in the yard and in the cell blocks watched the news. They erupted in cheers and screaming and hollering, you know. And I said, really? He said, yeah, man, because you won for all of us.
No doubt.
It wasn't just you. It was all of us. You see, and so those 19 and 20 years that we spent in prison, those 50 years that Jaleel spent in prison, all of those years that Herman spent in prison, you know, bonded us with these brothers and sisters who were in prison, who were under the brutal observation and treatment of the prison guards, developed their politics and their consciousness and changed their attitude towards the Black community from criminal to revolutionary. And of course, the epitome of that was Comrade George Jackson.
Without a doubt. And that right there, you know, again, because when we talk about political prisoners, one of the things that I appreciate you talking about is we're not talking about a matter of guilt or innocence. You understand what I'm saying? We're talking about liberation. But I know Natasha has a question that she wants to raise or comment.
Your mic.
Your mic is muted, Natasha. You was going off.
It's not a comment or a question. I mean, it's not a question. It's more of a comment in relation to, like, you know, what we're talking about in terms of like you were all saying, the way that the sister was making you see the connections between the Young Thug case and the Panther 21, and also thinking about RICO and how the state reuses the same tactics, you know, as long as they work. And I think it's important when people do raise questions like, oh, okay, will Young Thug, you know, when people do question that, we have to be able to, that those questions are necessary so that we can engage with each other and understand these things, because I think all of it is a valid thing, right? To question, to wonder, to see. And so how we work through that is by having those things come up and we talk about them and people learn through a process like this. Because yeah, I'm one of the people who would be like, Young Thug, okay, what is this? But, you know, having this conversation, looking forward to seeing, you know, what's going to be happening and the connections and the education that's going to be done through this series that's going to come up, will be able to help us, you know, make those linkages. And because I think sometimes when we say things, there's so much room, especially in the world of like the internet, for people to just take that one thing and not put all of the context with it.
Yes.
And yeah, whether it's, you know, good or bad. And so I think it's definitely important for all of the conversations and all the questions and all the wonderings to come up so that we can make those connections and learn in the process, so we can better, like Dhoruba was saying, yeah, and like even thinking about those who you know, were in gangs or in the streets, they have particular skills. Like, you know, people when people think about what's that movie Taken, when the guy says like, I have a particular set of skills, like we need people who have particular sets of skills too. And you know, like you were saying,
it's like Sekou Odinga will always remind you, like Sekou Odinga, Kalonji knows, like Sekou Odinga would always remind folks that before that when he joined the party, he was a stick-up kid. That's what he did, you know. And I think that we really should really understand that it's our history and our experiences, our existential experiences that ultimately changes how we approach life and struggle. Mao Zedong says that the dynamic factor in war is the subjective factor. You could put everything you want to in the computer and program it and figure this is how we're going to wage the war, but it's the human factor, it's the subjective factor that you can't program. And this is one of the reasons why the Vietnamese defeated the most powerful military force on the planet, because they didn't get the memo that they were supposed to lose. They didn't get that memo. They didn't get that. So they organized underground. They organized in the streets. They organized in the bushes, and they won. And it's the same thing that we're looking at in Palestine with the resistance to the IDF and the racist Israeli military forces. They can't wipe out the armed resistance of the Palestinian people. That their struggle is going to be successful. They're going to win. And sooner or later, the Zionist state is going to be in the dustbin of history. So it's just that we have been programmed to believe that we can't win. We have been programmed to believe that our struggle, our resistance would be wiped out in the blink of an eye. Well, I assure you that no people's struggle that has fought for the liberation of their people has ever been wiped out. It has ever been unsuccessful. They thought that the FALN could not free themselves from the French, and they did. They thought the South African armed struggle and ANC and people's struggle could not free themselves from the apartheid, and they did. We have to understand that we too can do that. But it's a matter of how we look at our people and how we look at our resources and how we mobilize our struggle and how we organize our struggle to resist and to survive. And that's our struggle right now for Black folks, is to survive the collapse of white supremacy in the European nation state and survive it, and to survive it intact so that we could have our own self-determination and build a better world for our people and our children.
No doubt. We look over that, and on that note, we say we look forward to standing on the rubble of white supremacy, you know, and
Absolutely.
white hegemony. And you know, and this is why, for the record, let me just state to your point, Natasha, this is why we're doing a show on someone like a Young Thug, because of the fact that who else can? You know what I'm saying? We need to jump in and dissect what's going on. When folks are talking about RICO charges, what is RICO? You know what I mean? Why is RICO charges being waged against this particular rapper and his crew? Why is it that the Buckhead community in Atlanta was trying to break away and become its own city, and all of a sudden, Young Thug, who lives in Buckhead, had to be one of the people that was slammed because they were trying to getting rid of certain types of folks in that community. This particular case goes a little bit deeper than it's seen, and we're going to unravel that. We're going to talk about Fani Willis, who is the prosecutor who attempted to prosecute Trump, and who you found out of all kinds of different situations that she was into. And of course, folks went black girl magic because she got up in the courtroom talking crazy and whatnot. So, you know, but we're going to deal with this thing as a whole, and we appreciate the viewers for checking us out. We appreciate you all checking out Rise Up Morning Show. Tune in tomorrow. You know, I know Isaac has a great guest on tomorrow talking about, propaganda, talking about movies and how that thing works and whatnot. We have a whole lot of great guests coming on this week, so make sure, the author of National Security Cinema will be on with Isaac and a few other folks. So make sure that you all tune in and, as the comrades say, stay on the right side of the barricades. We're going to win in spite of ourselves. Rise up. Black Power Media. We out.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one. Well, the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish, what tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution, it's real solutions. Well, we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Well, my inner me, really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. Like chariots are swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution, it's real solutions. where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution, where my enemy is really a mirror.